Hi, for the next few minutes I'm going to walk you through how to use the rubric for paper number 1 as a proofreading and editing guide. If you turn over your rubric if it's double-sided, or look at page 2 if you're looking at a single-sided version, you will see a lot of information jammed onto a page, and that can be really scary for students. But the truth is, that's meant to be sort of a list of all the different areas that everybody needs to check. And most students know most of those things and do them correctly, and just have anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 problem areas that they need to review. Unfortunately, for the first paper, a lot of times what we're trying to do is figure out what those areas are. So on the rubric, you're going to see a lot of major sections, and I'm going to walk you through them quickly now. The first section is about sentence structure, and these are the big glaring grammatical errors that can dramatically lower a grade because they suggest you're not in command of the form of sentences and how they work and how to use them. So if you've heard before from teachers that you have trouble with comma splices or fused sentences or fragments, dangling modifiers, etc., you can use this sheet to sort of remind yourself what are the basic rules there. I should look for those as I'm checking over my paper. And then I use this sheet to mark off areas where I see concerns when I grade your paper. And from there we'll come up with an individual game plan. Maybe you and I need to sit down and review this. Maybe we need to get you connected with a tutor at the Writing Center. Maybe you could just do a quick review of some materials on YouTube or the web. We'll craft that after you get your first paper graded and back. But before then, you can be using this as a checklist for you, and I will use it to inform you of where I see issues. Another area where there's often problems in college papers are agreement issues. Subject verb, verb tense agreement, those are problems, especially for students who haven't read as much or for students who are working with second language negotiations. But the biggest one that almost everyone struggles with in early college writing are pronouns. In particular, the use of it and they, which are very vague and 90% of the time should be replaced with specific nouns, and the use of really generic words like you and one that are often vague substitutes for situations that actually require much more specific nouns. You in particular can be very confusing because every time you say you in a paper, the reader says me, and that can really throw a reader off or antagonize a reader who doesn't see themselves as having the qualities or the characters or the problems that the you speak about in your paper does. And finally, we want to make sure our pronouns agree. So agreement issues is sort of the second cluster of things that you'll encounter on this rubric and in your papers. And you'll notice here, by the way, that I give each major grammar or punctuation error a letter code, so A, and then some numbers and smaller letters. So if you're looking at your paper and you see marked in the column in the margin A2, that tells you that in that sentence or paragraph there's an agreement error, and it's a verb tense agreement. And sometimes I'll even go a letter below that and say A2A or A2B. But these codes are designed to help you quickly sort of connect back from your paper to the rubric and see where the individual problems are, but also where the patterns are, right? Did you have a lot of A3s in your paper? That suggests that you need to work on clarifying your pronouns. Another area that students worry about a lot, but actually isn't as important as you might think in terms of impact on your grade, but is important if there are cumulative problems. In other words, 2 or 3 punctuation errors, no big deal. 10 or 15 punctuation errors, big deal. And so the 6 I like to focus on are listed here: using introductory element commas, commas before fanboys, avoiding unnecessary commas, the infamous semicolon versus colon, which we'll revisit next week for some strategies that might help you, and then apostrophes, which are the bane of my existence. Everybody has some punctuation problem. Everybody, and mine is apostrophes. And then there's a section on the rubric that's about style and gives you reminders of basically what we've been looking at in the style and grammar lectures we've had over the first 3 weeks of the course. So concision, active verb, sentence variety. Again, I use this sheet to point you in directions when I grade your paper, but this is actually a really good tool for you to think about using when you're still revising your paper. You haven't actually started proofreading and editing, but you're revising, and you're revising primarily for style. How can I clarify my meaning through different sentence structures and through language clarification and revision? And this is a nice checklist for that. Another checklist that appears on the rubric page is an MLA format checklist. And I have tried to have you set up your documents from the get-go in proper MLA format, so I think a lot of this will not be a problem for you, but it is a checklist that you can use before you turn in your paper and say, am I doing all this? And it's a checklist that I can use when I grade your paper to say, hey, you're missing some of these. And so the rubric really works as a two-way street. It's a checklist study guide for you. It's, for me, a tool to help inform you of what you need to work on when you get this first paper back. So that, in a nutshell, is what our course rubric for paper number 1 looks like. And as you can see, it's a really good place for you to start the process of thinking about how to proofread and edit your first essay in the class. Thanks. See you back out there in course land.